The kid can't speak because he doesn't hear. You put the tubes in, they come back 2 weeks later, and all of a sudden you can't tell them to be quiet because they don't stop talking. So which one is more gratifying to you, the surgical part or the medical part of ENT?
The surgical part is nice just because it breaks up the week. Like seeing 25, 30 patients a day, 5 days a week can be really taxing. So if it's broken up by the surgery, it's just a nice change. I would imagine if I was in the operating room 5 days a week or 4 days a week and had one day of office hours, the office hours would be a nice change because then I'd be interacting with human beings. Not
Yeah.
that we don't interact in the operating room, you know what I'm saying. So I think it's just the variety that makes the surgery a little more appealing because it's just, I don't spend as much time in the operating room as I do in the office. Also, one of my favorite things is the kid that comes in with poorly controlled asthma, enlarged tonsils, adenoids, fluid in their ear. They're not speaking so well. They can't breathe out of their nose at all. They're mouth breathing. They might even have failure to thrive because it's so hard to eat when you can't breathe at all through your nose. They're snoring. The parents find their every night terrifying because the kids got such bad sleep apnea. They're coughing their brains out because of their uncontrolled asthma. They see me and we get that. I don't personally manage the asthma. We'll make some recommendations and then send it back to you guys, or but we'll help all that. And then suddenly they've just got a new kid. You take out the tonsils, you take out the adenoids, you put in the ear tubes, you manage the asthma. Now the kid's sleeping, they're speaking, they're eating. The parents are sleeping, everyone's sleeping. Often kids, they can have executive function problems because of the sleep apnea, like ADD, like ADHD, like symptoms. And then the kid's behavior improves. And it's for something that's not complicated, like taking out tonsils. We've all done it over 1,000 times. When you
I,
finish residency, you've done a few hundred adenotonsillectomies. You've done a few hundred sets of tubes by the time you finish your training.
I
It's
haven't taken anybody's tonsils out yet.
an ENT residency. And so for me, those cases are the most fulfilling because it's not hard to do. And the complication rate is low, especially if you're shaving the tonsils instead of removing them completely. And the kids do so well, and the parents are so great. It's amazing. It's
Yeah,
like
but I have
that's
only one time ever in my life seen a serious complication from a tonsillectomy on a kid that was obese that got his tonsils taken out. He had some kind of a weird bleeding thing,
mm,
bled out. We had to code him on the stretcher. It was really, this is way back in 93,
yeah.
94.
So that's a total tonsillectomy. The
Yeah,
bleeding
yeah,
risk from shaved
yeah.
tonsillectomies are like 1 in 1,000 because you're leaving a little bit of the capsule behind. But no, post tonsillectomy bleeds are a big deal.
Now,
For
the problem that happened with this kid was not that the surgeon did anything bad, that the complication wasn't expected. Somebody told him you should look for bleeding. Access to care, that
oh
was the problem.
yeah,
Couldn't
yes.
get a hold of their doctor, couldn't get a hold of their ENT. So all they could do is end up in the emergency room after you bled out really
Yeah.
bad.
So
So
yeah, the risk for tonsillectomy, total tonsillectomy, the risk is around 1 in 50 of a post tonsillectomy hemorrhage in kids, 1 in 20 in adults.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's a common complication.
So do adults, are you observing overnight or you still send them home right
No,
after?
typical bleeds happen about 5 to 7 days after surgery. They can happen immediately after surgery. Like I had one patient who did it, who that happened to them like in the recovery room, and then we brought them back to the operating room and stopped it. But typically it happens 5 to 7 days after surgery. So you're not just going to like keep them in the hospital.
No, you
You're not going to
can't.
keep all those patients in the hospital for observation a week later. It can happen. I've seen one happen 2.5 weeks later, which is like unheard of. But that's the furthest I've ever heard one happening after surgery. So, yeah.
Now, tell me more about your group because I looked at your website and your medical group is huge.
yeah.